Welcome to Agape's third Q&A with our program directors. We're here at Agape at our, actually the Davis family room. I don't think I've mentioned that in the previous two, but the Harrison and Robbie Davis family were part of making this room possible many, many years ago, and most recently it has been remodeled or updated because of the generous support of the Preds Foundation. So to those groups, we're very grateful. This morning, I'm here with Amy Parker. Amy's our social services director at Agape, following in a very wonderful line of folks who've been in this position before: Myrtle Qualls, Diana Crawford, Judy Rister, Jeff Fox, and so we're really happy and thankful to be here with Amy Parker today. We want to just real quickly remind you of some things that are coming up. On December the 7th, I believe it, December the 7th at 1:27, we'll be having a special time of prayer, not only for those who we serve, children in foster care, our foster families, the women and children who are at our shelter, as well as some of our staff who are going through some challenging and difficult things now with COVID. We want to ask you to join us at that time, and you should have received some emails about that. We'll certainly continue to post it here on Facebook as well. But this morning, we just want to take a few minutes and talk to Amy. As we are talking to Amy, if any questions come up or anything that you think about you'd like to ask, feel free to put those on the screen or send those to us at info@agapenashville.org, and we will respond to those as soon as possible. Again, thank you for joining us here this morning, and we're going to jump in now and just talk a little bit with Amy Parker. Amy, good to have you with us. Good to have you with us. Thank you for taking a little bit of time. We're in the middle of a CARF survey right now for our accreditation, so Amy and I had to kind of sneak over here real quick, and then after this is over, we're going to sneak right back to making sure that our accreditation holds up. We think it's going to, but so Amy, just take a minute or two and tell us a little bit about you, whatever you want to share. And feel free to share about our antagonistic relationship in the beginning that brought you here, but or not, so whatever you want to do. So.
I will say I'm so glad. I'm happy that we're doing this. Next time, though, we need to move this maybe to like 1 o'clock, because I'm not exactly a morning person.
You'll be fine.
Okay, so I am originally from Ohio. Go Buckeyes. All my family live in Ohio. We moved around a lot growing up. Never stayed in one place longer. High school was the longest I ever stayed in one state. And I think moving around a lot has given me a lot of empathy for our kids in foster care, because it's tough to move around a lot, constantly making new friends, having to find new houses. And so I think that's, honestly, when I look back at it now, I think that's really helps me to relate to our kids a lot. I moved to Tennessee, 20 years ago, got my master's degree at Tribeca in marriage and family therapy. I have worked, my first job out of grad school was at youth villages. I did crisis counseling.
Yeah.
I did marriage and family therapy. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I remember sitting in a session with a family and thinking, my life sucks so much more than yours right now. And Lord, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. And the Lord really kind of directed me more into program development and program management.
You're good at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Worked at the Vanderbilt Center of Excellence as a mental health consultant for the Department of Children's Services. Learned a lot. Dr. Ebert and Tara Kuhn at the COE are incredible. Learned so much working there. And then was asked to be the Deputy Regional Administrator for DCS. I did that job for 5 years. And that's how I met you.
Yeah.
You called me one day about a case that we had, and I remember thinking, I wish more people, not more people, but more kids in care would have people that would advocate for them like you were advocating for that little girl. And I remember thinking, I love what he's saying. I think the family that he's talking about loves Jesus, and but I still had to go with my gut.
You had boxes to check.
I had boxes to check. And the beauty of that story is, this past year, we were able to go together,
Yeah.
I as an Agape worker and you
Yeah.
as the executive director, to that same little girl that we talked about,
Yeah.
her adoption, and she's with her forever family now.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome how the Lord kind of
Yeah.
worked that out.
Yeah, I'll never forget that day I called you. It had been several months later, and you were sitting there. I think you were sitting at a red light, and you were just sitting there saying, "I got to do something different, Lord." And
Yeah,
and
it's true.
I called you that day, and when you were having those thoughts, and it worked out great. So take a. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm
It's
glad
a
to
real
be
joy
here.
to have you. And I know it's been a tough week for you.
It has been.
It's been bittersweet. We've had some beautiful adoptions this week. 2 little boys, foster kids into forever homes, and that's been special. But there's been some other real challenges. We won't get into that right now. But again, thanks for getting up early and getting here.
Thank
and being
you.
part of this. So just tell folks might be listening for the first time or don't know a lot about Agape, may not know a lot about our social services department. So just kind of quickly tell them a little bit about the different things that we do in social services.
Sure. I really see Agape as kind of, I look at us kind of like the little boy that had 5 fishes and loaves of bread and took him to Jesus and he fed 5,000 people. Because we are not the biggest agency in town. We, compared to some other agencies, we have a skeleton staff compared to what they do. But what we do have is staff who love Jesus and open hands come to him and say, "What can I do for these kids?" And even more, we have foster parents who are, I could talk for the next hour about what our foster parents do.
And you may have a chance to do that at some point.
I won't today. So currently we have 60 kids that are in an Agape foster home. We have a sibling group of 4 that is placed together. Couldn't find placement for them across the state, and we accepted them. And 3 weeks ago, the foster family came down with COVID. And a lot of families would have called DCS and said, "Come get them now." And they didn't. They hung in there. She kept the kids. Agape spent a lot of money sending them food. That's just one bright example, I think, of the quality and the kind of people that we have. They don't give up on kids, even if they have COVID. Our staff, we have 4 full-time case managers who ideally would be capped at 15 cases. Right now they're not, because we can't say no to kids.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. We actually have another interview today. We're hoping to bring on another full-time case manager. We have 2 full-time home study writers. We also have one of those home study writers also manages our foster parent reassessments every year to be accredited through the state, the Department of Children's Services. Our foster parents have to be reassessed. Another one of our home study writers also works our adoption cases. She just had 4 adoptions this year. 3 kids from Texas. She had 3 kids from Texas that she managed for 6 months, and they were just adopted last month. And then a family that has a newborn infant that was one of our maternity cases.
That was pretty special.
It is.
Came from the hospital, right?
Yeah.
Well, the vets, Vet and Lisa have been here a long time and have done a great job in that area. And it's kind of interesting because that had kind of gone away for a long time, or not a long time, but for a little while, just not. But now that maternity and sort of infant or independent adoption is starting to we're starting to see sort of there a little bit of an increase in that again. But foster care continues to grow, as you said. 60 today, and I think earlier this week we had 64, 65 at one point. So it's just ongoing, the need for children going into the kind of homes, as you said. I mean, our folks are special. I mean, and the people around here know they're special. So I'm going to ask you a question. It's not on the sheet that I gave you. And then we'll get into the question I asked on the sheet. So you were in DCS, Department of Children's Services, for 5 years.
I wasn't myself in DCS.
I
worked.
I know you were working there. So I mean, what would you if you, and not to I'm not trying to be negative towards DCS or anything, but just what do you see as kind of the difference between sort of like Agape and our families compared to what, again, not be more on the, I don't want to slam DCS, but maybe just share a little bit about that.
Well, I will say first in defense of DCS, there's almost 9,000 children in the state custody across the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
The state was never created to raise children.
Never
Families
was.
were. And so
And Tennessee is actually one of the better states
They are.
across the entire country
They are.
in how they handle kids in foster care.
I will say that it is a broken system, it is an overburdened system, and an underutilized and under-resourced system. I saw kids who would come in and they would have their well-being needs met, they would have medical appointments, they would have food, they would have clothes. But what DCS can't give to these children is the hope of Jesus and families that will love them forever, regardless of how long they're there. They take them into their home and treat them as their own. They open up their hearts and love them like they're in their own family. And that just doesn't happen in DCS. And that, again, is not to slam on DCS and on foster families. It's a very different mission. It's a very different mission.
Well, I think you're right. I think the mission, and I'm sure we know them. We know a lot of good foster families with the DCS programs, but it's not their mission. Whereas I think here that is our mission. That's what we're always striving towards. So talk to us a little bit about why children come into care.
So children will come into care one of two ways. They come in because there have been allegations of abuse or neglect, or they will come in of their own doing because they've had delinquent charges. So you're either adjudicated as a dependent neglect child or adjudicated for charges. Typically, everyone thinks kids come into DCS custody because of sex abuse. That is such a misnomer. Kids come in most frequently because they've been neglected. Nobody's fed them. Nobody's making sure they get to school.
Right.
They haven't ever been to a dentist. They have lice. They're dirty. We had kids who came into care just this year who had lice when they came in.
Yeah.
We've had the same family. The little girl's never had a dentist appointment. She's had to already have oral surgery. These kids are coming into care because parents a lot of times have substance issues.
Right.
They have mental health issues. A lot of times too, the cycle repeats itself. These parents themselves have been in DCS custody. Nobody ever parented them. And we see that, just this week, we had a teenage girl that was in care and had a baby.
Yeah.
And so, what happens when that happens? We step in and love on those kiddos.
Yeah. Well, and a perfect example, we're struggling a little bit with, some not so much that we have staff that has tested for COVID, but we're constantly bumping into people who have, and so we have to quarantine.
That's right.
And so that left you with not that you minded, you would have done it anyway, I think, but at the hospital for that teenage girl and being there for her, and then I think I was packing your car with some stuff last night for you to take to her as well. So I think it's that's just part of that mission. So I'm not sure how to ask this question. I'll just throw it out there. Maybe we can just chat a little bit about it. But so when kids come into care with Agape, but I think maybe even just generally, maybe talk a little bit about what is the goal for that child. Talk about permanency, and maybe just talk a little bit about what's the goal for that child.
There's lots of research out there, like the ACEs study.
Mm-hmm.
We always want to reunify that family. Children do best with their birth families, with the caveat that it's safe, right? And the thing that is also very different about Agape foster parents is they truly will wrap around these birth families. One of our foster parents this year helped a single mom get into an apartment, helped her get it set up. We have another single dad who we got some furniture for. In the event that these kids can be back with their families and they can have support and whatever brought them in, it's never going to be completely alleviated, but if they can get support and services so that they can get home, that's best case scenario. But it's not always the case. It's just not. And so how can we do that in such a way that can be respectful of the kiddos and the family, and also a way that we ourselves aren't causing more trauma on that poor little kiddo?
Well, you just look at statistically, I think Tennessee actually does a pretty good job overall in reunification with children to their families, but still about 25-26% of kids who come into care, their parental rights will be terminated, and they will be children who will, in a sense, will be socially orphaned. They
That's right.
even though their parents may be alive, they no longer, their parents no longer have rights to them as children. And so about 25% of those kids who come into care will actually be, parental rights will be terminated, and they will be available for families to adopt into forever homes. And I just think about, we've had 2 this week. We've had, I think, we'll end up with about 8 or 10 this year through foster care. I think we've got a couple more coming up here pretty soon, and so it's really a special time. So let me kind of finish with this. What is there something, what would you like for people to know about foster care that maybe, we refer to it sometimes as the forgotten initiative.
Yeah.
And I know CAFO, Christian Alliance for Orphans, has this sort of saying about the forgotten initiative, and meaning that these kids go into foster care, and the rest of the world just kind of says, like you said, hey, state's taking care of that, and forget about them. But what was something that with your experience and background and all the work that you've done, what do you, or maybe a myth or a misconception people have about children in foster care?
Well, I would say that if you're getting into foster care because you need a project, or it could be maybe some good extra side money, go get a job at Uber and go build a garden.
Yeah.
Because kids aren't projects,
Yeah.
right? The other misnomer is I think it's scary to people.
Yeah.
Kids, so when a child comes into custody, what happens is the department will reach out to us, their placement department, and they send us a packet that's like this big, and it's everything that's ever happened to that child, and all their history, their medical history, education, and then a laundry list of behaviors, right? And I think sometimes, my goodness, what would happen if I saw my packet come across somebody's table of my worst days on earth coming through, and everybody across the state of Tennessee got to see that, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly kind of how it works a little bit.
Ironically, and I won't say his name, but one of our teenagers was in my office about a month ago, and he was waiting to go into counseling because a lot of our kids see an Agape counselor here.
Yeah.
And I was working and busy, and so I said, do you want to watch my phone? You can watch Netflix or whatever. And he said, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned on a movie, and it was a kid that was in foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about his packet and if he had a picture in there. And he said, do you got one of those on me? And I said, I do, buddy. And he said, do you have my picture? And I said, I do. He said, can I see it? And I said, yeah, it's your file. So he looked at it and he goes, can we take another one? I said, I mean, whatever you want.
Yeah,
Ironically, when he came into care, he was a little heavy.
Yeah.
He's worked out, so he wanted his buff.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, and those pictures are often taken on the day they come into care, which, like you said,
exactly.
It's one of the worst days, for them.
So he has a new picture now. That's in his file.
Good for him. So.
I don't remember your question. I'm sorry.
You kind of, just any myths around kids in foster care. I would just, my wife and I, of course, are foster parents,
That's right.
maybe if I could say, I think one of the myths is, I get this question a lot. Oh man, I just don't think I could do that because I would get too attached. And I won't say what I really think about that while we're on Facebook Live, but but I will. First of all, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about me, and it's not about our foster families. Our foster families get really attached to these kids, and yet they work hard, using their own resources often to be able to for these children to return home. And I think that's something that people need to understand about maybe a difference in Agape's mission. But I also want to just say, these kids come into care and they have severe trauma in their life. I mean, just even if their situation wasn't just horrible at home, but somebody came, took them away from mom or dad or both, and brought them to a really nice, wonderful home and placed them there, that's trauma in a kid's life. And so behaviors, there's going to be some behaviors that maybe or you're not going to necessarily see in your own children or children of other people that you hang out with. But these are kids created in the image of God,
That's right.
loved just as much by Him as our own children are, or their own children are. And we as God's people have got to see them through the eyes of Jesus. And the foster care is a place where we can really, really serve Christ on a day-to-day basis. And I'm just so proud of our team. I'm proud of all of the teams here in our programs here, but I guess there's a special place because of mine and Sherry's, being foster parents for such a long time and be personally invested in that.
I was reading last week, I don't remember where, they said if you want to do foster care and do it well, you are going to enter into the brokenness of that child, and in the process, your heart's going to be broken too.
Your heart's going to be broken.
And it's so true.
It is.
It's so true, because if you really want to do it well, you're going to jump in. You're going to jump in. You're going to jump into the deep end.
Yeah.
You are going to open your heart wide open to
Yeah.
these kids, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to be frustrating, but it is going to be the most incredible experience.
Well, as we say, it gives you sometimes the greatest joy, a joy and high from a joy you could ever have, and then sometimes it crushes your heart. You could never imagine you would have ever had that kind of sadness and brokenness that you'd ever experienced.
So true.
And there's both of those and all that in between. So, well, hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for, I guess you and I got to run off to a little more car stuff here just a little bit. Thanks for being here and doing this. Thanks for the work that you do and your whole team, and we appreciate you taking the time out here today. So we are going to wrap up. This is, if you're watching this live, it's the Friday before Thanksgiving, so we want to wish everybody, a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I know there's some restrictions around all of that, so be safe, be healthy, and be careful. But have a great, wonderful Thanksgiving holidays. We are certainly a blessed people. We are blessed here at Agape. Big part of why we're blessed because we have such great supporters. We have a great board who supports and guides this organization, keeps me in check, and so we just want to thank all of you who've been on here today. If you are listening to it at a different time, again, we just want to say thank you to those folks as well. Just as a reminder, don't forget about our December 7th at 1:27. Look for more information about that so that you can sign up and be a part of our special prayer day. I know I often have people tell me that we've been praying for Agape. I know we have prayer warriors out there who are praying for us every day, and I can't tell you how much that means to us, not only because we know those prayers are effective, but we also are encouraged to know that people are on their knees or in their beds or at their table remembering Agape and the work that we do. So we thank you for that. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Have a great day, and thank you again for joining us, and happy Thanksgiving.